the microphone on. Okay, the syllabus has changed. Some dates wrong and weeks wrong. And then the other thing I did, if you'll look at it, I eliminated the line where it says discussion board opens this week, discussion board due this week. And I think what was happening, it was confusing some people, because I know some of you did your discussion board a week early, thinking it was due the week it opened. So what I put, almost there, my friend. Did you come by plane? 900 feet? Oh, 2, not down. Okay. So what I eliminated was all the begin dates, and you can just see when the completion dates are. All right. And I think there were a couple things. I said the first book quiz was week 7, but it's really week 6. There's no class week 7, and I had extra week in there. I had week 12 twice. Now, I don't know how Jacqueline has her syllabus set up. Technically, there's only 14 weeks of class, but I included week 7 as one of the weeks, so that would give us the 15. 16 is the week your finished class then, but papers are due on that 16th week. Now some, well, they don't list week 7 there. They skip that week because we're not here and start week 7 where I have week 8. I did mine chronological as opposed to actual weeks. Okay, so you're really 15 weeks of class, but it's going to take you 15 weeks to complete and the 16th week for your final. All right, does that make sense? Is that confusing? A little bit? Maybe? Okay. And what I wanted to go over first tonight was your paper. And if you look at your syllabus, your paper is due on the 17th, 10/17. And I wanted to go over this just a little bit to make sure everybody was on board with this. Yes. And how many of you do in the English class online? Okay. And just as a way of a friendly reminder, there were assignments that were due for the English class, and I understand not everybody has turned theirs in. So just a friendly reminder, get your English papers in. I know it's an online class and it's difficult because you're not here. It requires, you know, to on your own initiative to go online and do that. But I think there's a few papers that have not been submitted. So for what it's worth, that's to you. All right? And I don't monitor the English class. Sean asked me to share that. Oh, and the keyboard. I couldn't figure out what's that noise. I couldn't figure out why. The second discussion board, which is a reply to somebody's first one, it's due this coming Saturday. Oh. The 26th, 9/26 due date. Okay.
I was doing it a week before. So was I. I was at 1 o'clock in the morning. Me too.
So for that reason, I eliminated the open date and I went with the end date. So they have to be in by. Yeah. Yeah, for some of you it's a plus. And the book quiz is week 6 or due by the 10th, 10/10. So get to reading if you're not in your book, get to reading your book so you'll be able to take that quiz. All right? And then week 7 we're off that week. You can see it says no class and your paper is due by 11:59 on the 17th. Yes. Yes. Everybody know how to submit a paper online? Just like the discussion board. You go in, you click on where it says Harmony paper. You click on that, and down at the bottom, if the new one. I haven't looked at the new one, but I assume it's the same. It'll give. You can click on Browse, and then it will go to your files in your computer. Click on your paper, and say Add. It'll add it to that, and then you say Submit. and it goes there. If you have a problem, you can call me.
You could write it right in there. Then, if you have the option to submit, then you can write it right there, right, in the little square.
Write the paper?
Yeah.
Oh, you would never. I mean, this is a 3 to 5 page paper. This is something that you're going to create on Microsoft Word and save it.
I don't have that, and I don't know how to use it either.
You don't have Microsoft Word?
And I don't know how to use it.
I type right in the box.
Yeah, I put everything.
But you're not going to be able to do this paper in that box. I promise
No.
you. This requires research. It requires you to enter sources. There's 2 videos online at MyOFC, how to write your paper. It'll tell you where to go on Microsoft Word, how to load it in, how to set up your front page and each of the additional pages, and what minimums are required in there, a introduction, and then your topics, and then your conclusion, and then you have an additional page, which is your source page. It's explained very easy. I looked at it today.
So what do you do if you don't have Microsoft Word? Because I have Word document,
You have Word,
and it doesn't let me copy and paste.
but you can create a file in that, right? You can save that Word document to a file. Like, you'd be able to name it and save it to your hard drive or to a flash drive or to something. And if you do, then it's on your computer. When you go to MyOFC and you do browse, you go to that location. You click on that paper. No, you don't have to copy and paper. You just click on whatever the title of your paper is and say save or add, and it'll bring your paper to MyOFC, and then you do submit, and it sends it to me. It loads it in there. If you have a problem, look at it when you get home and see if that'll work for you. You can just experiment a little bit. Of course, don't submit a paper that's not the one you want. But, okay? And you have no Word program on your computer? How are you doing your discussion board?
The iPad has a discussion board. You write it out and you submit.
Yeah, that's how it is.
So you guys neither have...
But it at work, and that's when I asked you if we were able to upload it to that second line.
Yes, which you can if you have it saved to a file.
So we can upload it.
Yeah. And your paper will be the same way. And so you have no computer with Word document. You just have your notebook, and it has no Word document. Then what I would say, you're just going to have to either type it out or write it out and give it to me. Okay? You don't either? Okay, so... Okay, so how did you get your discussion board? Through your iPhone. Okay. So other than the library, you have no access to a computer? Okay. Well, I know libraries open Saturday and Sunday too. I don't know what your work schedule is, but if you don't have the internet access to submit it that way, you can print it out and just bring it to me. But it will be due by the 17th, so if you can, we'll be back that next week. If you have it completed and give it to me by that Tuesday of the next week, then that'll be good, all right? Okay. All right, any other questions on that? Look at what you have available to you. The libraries, they're open 7 days a week. You know, if you have your paper handwritten out, if you have an email address or whatever, you can go to the library and do your work and send it that way if you want. I will accept the typed out one, okay? Okay, so the paper, the Harmony paper that is due, and we're gonna look at some things tonight that will help you with this paper. But just to let you know, the way I'm going to grade this paper is going to be based on these 4 things. Well, one more. Okay? So you're going to pick sources. You're going to, this will make it easy for you. Get your chronological paper. From that, pick a story about Christ in some way, some episode he did or something he did. A good example would be when he walks on the water. I think that's covered in at least 3 of the accounts, and they're different. That could be one you could pick. Anyone that is covered in at least 3 of the 4 Gospels. Okay, so let's look real quick here. He does his teaching and miracles. This is page 3, section C. Teaching and miracles by the Sea of Galilee. He has 3 there. The warning and the true kindred, the parables. They're in 3 different scriptures, 3 different Gospels. Let's see what else is there. Death of the John the Baptist, that's in 3 different Gospels. So just go through there and select one of the stories that's covered in at least 3 of the Gospels. Now, I would encourage you to do that this week. Select one this week. So you can be thinking about it. You can start reading about it. If you wait until the week that this paper's due, you're not going to have time to do the research. You need to be able to select it. I'd say select it this week, and then you'll be good to go.
So all these are from, you can select any of these? Or?
Any one you want.
Okay. So these are all on all 3 accounts. I mean, all.
Some of them there's only, one gospel written about it. But make sure you pick one that there's at least, it's written in, say, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, or Matthew, Mark, and John, or Mark, Luke, and John. As long as it's in at least 3. If it's in 4, that's good too. Just select one of them.
So if it's in 4, then we can go ahead and give the, 4.
Yes, whatever way you want to do it. Okay. Any questions on that? Is that understandable? So just select one of those. And then as you're doing this paper, there is a tutorial online, my OFC, on how this paper is supposed to be structured. When you open up the My OFC on your internet, when you click on student, where you would log in at student, in there's 3 drops. Is English writing paper or something. You click on that, and there's 2 videos that you can watch how to prepare your. They're pretty simple. It's not Sean just standing here talking. What you'll see is a document there, and he'll step you through one step at a time. File, add, whatever is taken, whatever's needed to write out this document, and he walks you through. It's like 13 minutes, so you can review it a couple times. But I would encourage you, select your topic this week so you can start working on that. Now, as far as the grading, what I'm going to look for on your paper, I'm not going to look for all the wisdom and anointing on your paper, but I am going to look to see that you meet these 5 requirements. That's what I'll grade your paper on, these 5 requirements. That you note the similarities, you note the differences in the accounts. Maybe 2 of the accounts will almost be identical, 1 will be a little different. There'll be something in there that's different. None of the gospel writers tell the story exactly the same. There's always a little nuance or something different in there. See if you can determine the meaning. Why is this story there? What could you draw from that story? Maybe a personal application. What did it speak to you? That would meet that requirement. These can be the headings for your context. You can say introduction, say what you're going to do. It's a harmony paper, and then start with a smaller heading, similarities. Next one, differences. And you write a couple of paragraphs under each one of these, and you'll quickly fill up 3 pages. What your application would be, or what it spoke to you personally, as long as you get that in there. Someone say something? 3 pages? It's not hard. It really is not. Let me give you a little tip on that. When you see the similarities, you read through all 3 of them a couple of times. And then go to, when you start this, write a couple of sentences about what you saw, and then write around that sentence. You know, take that one sentence. I noticed that when Jesus saw them on the water, he was still up on the mountain when he saw them struggling in the boat. So that could be a sentence that you put in there, and then build on that sentence. Make that sentence a paragraph. Then do another sentence, and then make that sentence a paragraph. Just elaborate on that thought, that he saw them from the mountain. You know, how could he see them from the mountain? You know, it was a stormy night, so there was something. So you see what I'm saying? And then do that. So you're going to do similarities. You do the same thing for difference. Write you a couple sentences, and then make it a paragraph. What personal application you got from it, whatever meaning was derived from it for you, and then pick one of the gospel writers, one of the three that you read from, and I want you to write why his story was a little bit different. Now, that's not going to be as hard as you think it is, because I'm going to give you some things tonight that will help you do that part. Okay? And then Sean shows you how to list your sources. This could be sources like Chuck Swindoll's book. You pulled something from there, or another book you've read, or an internet site, Bible Gateway. You know, those sites that I sent you, use some of those and query that particular story and see what it gives you. That would be easily 2 sources, no problem. You can have more. You can have more, but a minimum of 2. Because I think I said this at the beginning of the classes. This is about you learning. It's not so much about me giving you all this information, and it's not about you writing a paper about what you know now. It's to write a paper about what you're learning. That will make the difference. If all you do is write on a paper what you already know, you're not gaining anything from the class. You need to stretch yourself and find topics and things that you didn't know before, and that's what this research will do. Okay? Any questions? Got a couple more weeks before that's due, so I would suggest you get started on that. Okay? So, what I want us to look at tonight are the 4 Gospels. We'll give you some information about each one of the gospel writers, and then we'll go forward with that. All right. So I guess the first thing, why did they need 4 gospel writers? Why would there have to be 4 different stories? Because each person will bring a little different aspect to the story of Christ. And each felt inspired by God to write these accounts, and each had a different purpose in mind as to why they wrote their accounts. And that's what I want us to look at tonight. 2 of the writers were disciples. Do you know which 2 were disciples of Jesus? Matthew, John. Just 2 of them. Matthew was one of the 12. John was one of the 12. And we're going to find out who these other 2 guys were. Luke was a doctor, and he traveled with Paul. His ministry with Paul started in Acts 16. And if you look at Acts 16, 7 through 10, you'll pick up as you read that, it's Luke wrote Acts also. So Luke is writing, and he said, they went here, they went there, they did this, and then all of a sudden, in Acts 16, 7 through 10, he changes it to we. We were here, we went there, we heard this. So in Acts 16, that chronological account, that's when Luke joined Paul. because he went from the third person to the second person, we. Before that, all the accounts in Acts say they. He's telling the story that he's researched. At 16, now he starts to say we, which means he was there personally recording, or at least getting the information. So that was Luke, Dr. Luke. And the other writer was John. That's John Mark. John Mark, you'll find him also in Acts 12:12. His mother was a Christian, and he traveled with Paul and Barnabas. If you remember the story, he traveled with Paul and Barnabas, and somewhere in that first missionary journey, he decided to go back home. Later on, when Paul and Barnabas were getting ready to go on their second missionary journey, Paul didn't want to take Mark because he had deserted them the first time. But that's not the end of Mark. Mark comes back, he does better, and he ends up being a close companion with Paul and also a disciple of Peter. So it seemed like Mark, fell on hard times, but maybe it was just God working in his life to prepare him for something else. Okay? So let's look at Matthew first. The name Matthew means gift of the Lord. May or may not be some importance to you. The dates, I'm going to give you some approximate dates as to when they think these Gospels were written. I wouldn't put a whole lot of emphasis on the dates. They're just ballpark dates. Matthew could be written as early as the 50s, the first century, the 50s, or as late as 70 AD. So that's a 20-year window. Unfortunately, these guys didn't date them and not had a computer that would restore or keep date of when they wrote them. And the writer is Matthew, and he was a Galilean tax collector and a disciple of Jesus. And I found it was interesting with Matthew, and maybe he just wanted to give a good, accurate account, but in his writings in chapter 10, he acknowledges that he's a tax collector, which was a pretty lowly position for a Jew to be in. And for him to acknowledge that said a lot for Matthew. He was willing to acknowledge, I was a tax collector, but I think what he was doing in that, he was saying, God even loves tax collectors. We think about the IRS people. We don't get fond, bubbly feelings about them. He could have easily said he was an accountant and not a tax collector. So I think his honesty was coming out in that. In Matthew 9:12, when the religious leaders questioned Jesus on his choice of friends, Jesus, they said to Jesus, "You're eating with tax collectors and sinners. You're with tax collectors and sinners." And the way Jesus responds, he says, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick." And remember last week we talked about the poor, the blind, the captives, and the downtrodden. Those were the people that Jesus came for. That was his mission. So Matthew definitely fell in one of those categories. Some think, and you don't need to write all this down, some think it was originally written in Hebrew because Matthew was a Hebrew Jew, and later it was translated into Greek, which was a pretty common language at that time in that area. And one of the purpose that Matthew wrote was to declare Jesus as son of David. And I have a quote here from Arthur Pink. He says, "Christ is the son of David, rightful heir to the Masonic throne. Here we see Christ's royal genealogy, the visit by the Magi from the east to announce his kingly birth, and the proclamation of his laws in the Sermon on the Mount. So Matthew is presenting Jesus as from the kingly line of David, son of David. So when you get to doing your paper and you're pulling something from the book of Matthew and you want to focus in on his approach to that, remember he was all about portraying the son of David. The genealogy went back to David. The Magi came, again reinforcing another son of a king, David the king. And his other purpose was to prove Jesus of Nazareth is the fulfillment of the messianic prophecy. He quotes many Old Testament quotes that these prophecies were fulfilled. And I'll give you these. Matthew 1:21 through 23. He quotes that he was born of a virgin. That was a prophecy from Isaiah 7:14. I'm not going to read the whole verses because our time is getting short here. Isaiah 7:14. And then in Matthew 2:5 through 6, he mentions the place where Jesus was born, Bethlehem, and that was a prophecy through Micah 5:2. In Bethlehem in Judea, for this is what the prophet has written. Each place where he mentions one of the prophets, he'll say, this is the prophecy that was fulfilled, or this was the prophecy that was told. And the last one, in Matthew 13:34, he mentions that he did not speak anything to them other than in parables. So Matthew's, full of the parables, and that was a prophecy from Psalm 78, verse 2. Jesus spoke all these things to the crowd in parables. He did not say anything to them without using a parable. So was fulfilled what was spoken through the prophet. So Matthew keeps coming back to that. Whatever was fulfilled through the prophets. I don't know how many times he registers that, but I think it was like 40 plus times that he quotes Old Testament and shows how Jesus fulfilled those prophecies. The last one that I have for that, for the prophecy being fulfilled, is Matthew 27:9 through 10, and Jeremiah 32:6 through 9. It prophesies of the 30 pieces of silver that Jesus was betrayed for. Judas took 30 pieces of silver from the priest and betrayed his Savior that way. And we said Matthew also goes back and gives the genealogy of Christ back to David. So, Matthew, son of David. So as you're working on your paper and you get one section on Matthew, you know what his emphasis was. If what he says is totally different from these two, and there's some aspect of Jesus' lineage back to David, that's your person that you want to focus why he wrote differently than the others, because he was focused on the Son. All right? Any questions on Matthew? I tell you what I'm going to do. Keep taking notes, but I will send these all to you, okay? So you can look at the verses closer. But I would encourage you to keep taking some notes because that reinforces it for you.